ladies and gentlemen, in one of our recent creepy and mysterious videos, we actually reacted to a clip of Jill Dando, the news reporter who was tragically shot dead outside her home in London. Now this story right here, ladies and gentlemen, is extremely interesting. The unfortunate mystery behind the death of Jill Dando is that the killer has not been found. In fact, a man was arrested, charged and sentenced to life behind bars. He goes by the name of Barry Michael George. However, a mysterious twist took place whereby after serving 7 years of his sentence, he was released after an appeal because of the lack of evidence to prove he killed Jill Dando. What's extremely ironic about this one, ladies and gentlemen, is that Jill Dando was known for reporting on unsolved mysteries, unsolved murders, crimes, cases. And this one right here, after 25 years, is still unsolved. Off the back of the creepy and mysterious video that we did, there was a number of you guys that left comments in regards to deep diving the Jill Dando case. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to familiarize ourselves with this case so we can try and gain an understanding as to why Jill Dando was killed and who killed her.
So, almost a decade after Jill Dando's murder, the investigation was back to square one, and I hate to have to tell you, but we've basically stalled out ever since. The case is cold. That's not to say it's forgotten. Jill's family and friends still appear on British TV every now and then with new appeals for information. I'll go ahead and drop a small spoiler by saying that most people are now convinced that a professional pulled off the murder. Several people in the British and Serbian underworld have suggested they might know who was to blame. Cop-turned-journalist Mark Williams-Thomas, the guy who broke the
Oh no, Mark Williams-Thomas. I didn't even know he was involved in this one.
Case managed to speak to one of them face to face. He gained access to police documents which showed a list of potential suspects. These were hired killers and assorted miscreants. William-Thomas managed to track down an unarmed individual from the list to pick his brains, a known hitman who was identified as a potential lead but never pursued. The journalist asked the contract killer if any of the names on the long list of the Underworld suspects might be to blame. He replied, "There's one in particular that stands out to me, but I wouldn't identify that person because it's very dangerous." It seems like he might have passed on that name to Mark Williams-Thomas under condition of total anonymity. The journo now believes he has the name of the man who ordered the murder to send out a direct bloody message to others: do not take on organized crime. Yes, I mean...
So, did I just hear that right? Mark Williams-Thomas is confirming that he has the name of the person that ordered the murder. Is that what we're saying here? Did I just hear that right? And you're telling me still to this day in big 2025, we still don't know who ordered that murder? We're already sounding like Jay Slater. What's going on?
April 26, 1999. Jill Dando was one of the most trusted...
Oh my God, look at that. April 26. Ah, this is starting to get all creepy, bruv.
Why do you think Jill Dando was murdered?
I think she knew what was going on, and I think there was, I think she had information on the famous singing celebrity, myself.
Get ready with me while I talk about who killed Jill Dando. I watched this documentary on Netflix last night, and let me tell you that the whole thing is just so shocking. So if you're not familiar with the story, Jill Dando was a BBC news presenter, and she was also like the face of the prime time TV shows throughout the 80s and 90s. This was her here. So she was kind of compared to Princess Diana because she was just so beloved in the world of TV, and people in the UK just absolutely adored her. I think the most shocking thing I found about this case was the fact that it was like a completely unprovoked killing in broad daylight. Like it happened in the middle of the day. On the morning of the murder, you can see there is evidence that Jill was out running errands around West London. She then drove herself back to the house that she owned, but she was selling. She rarely visited this house as she was living with her partner at the time. Dando stepped out of her car and walked a few feet to her front door.
And that's very interesting to hear that she rarely lived at the address. She rarely lived at the address. So how did the person know that she was going to be pulling up at the address on that day? If her and her partner lived together at a different address and she was just pulling up there for random, I don't know, check-in, stop by because she was selling the place, so she wanted to make sure no one had broken in, how did they know to be there at that time to execute the killing as clean as they did?
She proceeded to pull her keys out of her pocket. It was at that very moment that she was shot once in the head by an unknown assailant.
So on that basis, they had clearly been given information that she was pulling up to the address at that time. I have to ask, who knew Jill was going to that property at that time.
Broad fucking daylight. Her body was then discovered a few moments later by her neighbor, who then proceeded to call the police. This guy called Barry George was later arrested in 2000 for the murder of Jill Dando. So Barry didn't really know Jill, but he lived in the area and police actually arrested him following a search of his house. However, the only piece...
What made them suspect Barry George of committing this heinous crime? What gave them those suspicions? What evidence did they have to lead them to raid his home?
Hard evidence that the police found was a singular particle of gunshot residue that was found in a coat hanging in Barry's wardrobe. So
wow. I mean, at that point, when you hear that, it sounds like that was on purpose. They wanted to bury the case as soon as possible so no one was asking any more questions and everyone believed they had caught their killer. They hadn't. The guy they put in jail, Barry George, was innocent.
He was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment in 2001. However, after the gunshot residue evidence was found to be inadmissible, there was a retrial in 2008 which found Barry to be innocent and he was eventually released from prison. There are multiple theories as to who killed Jill Dando, but I think the one that has gained the most traction is that she was essentially shot by a Serbian hitman. Now, I kind of think that there is some weight to this theory just because weeks before her murder, Dando was actually a part of a Kosovo crisis appeal campaign in support of those fleeing Balkans. Also, less than a week before her death, NATO bombed the radio television headquarters in Serbia, killing 16 employees. The BBC then started receiving heaps of anonymous threats, some even directed at Dando, basically sending her death threats. I think one of the most chilling things of all, that I found the most chilling, was the fact that...
So on the basis of them reporting on what was going on over in parts of Europe, they went to the extreme of tracking her down to her address in Fulham to put a bullet through her head. I'm not too sure if I entirely buy into it.
An opposition journalist was actually murdered in the exact same way on his doorstep just 2 weeks before Jill was murdered.
Okay, let's say that again.
Was actually murdered in the exact same way that an Serbian opposition journalist was actually murdered in the exact same way on his doorstep just 2 weeks before Jill was murdered.
So I guess that's the reason as to why people are leaning towards it being the Serbians that took the life of Jill Dando.
This case has never sat right with me. Jill Dando was an English journalist, TV presenter, and newsreader who was most known for her work with BBC News in the 1990s. In December of '97, Jill met a man named Alan Farthing on a blind date, and the two fell in love. By 1997, they were engaged, and they were set to be married that September. On air, she exposed Serb atrocities and appealed for aid during the...
So they got engaged in 1999. This is shortly before she passed away. Is that correct? Am I correct there? We go back, this guy Alan, the fiance, they met through a blind date. Who organized that one? Cilla Black?
Yugoslav Wars. Just 3 weeks later, on April 16th, 1997, Jill left Alan's house and drove alone to her own home. Once she stepped out of her car, she was struck in the head by a bullet, killing her instantly.
Okay. We don't really know the facts at this moment in time because we heard from another video that she was in West London doing some errands before she went home. This lady tells us that she was at Alan's house before she went back to her house. The person who could possibly have known her movements that evening is her fiance, Alan, or colleagues at the BBC. I think we have to do a bit of digging into her fiance, Alan, because there could be some links there.
Despite search efforts for 6 months, police found nothing. They then charged and convicted a man named Barry George, who lived about a half-mile from the house and had a history of stalking women, sexual offenses, and other...
He seems like a fool guy. It seems like he was a fool guy just to get the case wrapped up, but also to control public perception, to make people believe that they've caught their killer. Everyone's cool, everyone's easy. We've got justice for Jill. That's how people were feeling for at least 7 years until this guy made an appeal. They looked into the evidence and it was proved that the evidence wasn't strong enough. It wasn't strong enough, so he was released.
Jill Dando. She was so polished and so professional. In many ways, I think people saw Jill as a TV Diana.
So glamorous, it's wonderful.
Jill, I think I felt like that as a kid. It's because they had similar looks, isn't it?
Was at the top of her game.
She was the nation's sweetheart.
The golden girl of British television, murdered on her doorstep in broad daylight.
Oh, it was in daylight. Wow. I thought it was the evening.
Everyone had a theory about who was responsible. Criminal networks, mafia, Russians, jilted lovers.
Is this an assassination? Is this an execution?
The Crime Watch presenter may have been assassinated by a Serbian gunman.
Speculation focuses on a possible stalker.
This was one of the largest murder investigations the Metropolitan Police ever had to face.
It was the biggest reward in criminal history in this country.
Today, a man was arrested on suspicion of murder.
Do you recognise the person in the picture?
Anyone?
That's a picture of you, Mr. George.
During the course of the search, we recovered a lot of undeveloped film.
This was an injustice. He did not murder Jill Dando.
It makes me angry that they've taken 8 years of my life. After his acquittal, there has been no more serious investigation into Jill Dando's death.
People are still coming to terms with one of the most bizarre murders ever committed.
Why would they kill her? What benefit would anybody accrue from killing Jill Dando?
The files should still be open on this case. They should be looking.
To be sitting here 24 years on and saying that we still do not know who killed Jill Dando is mind-boggling.
Whoever did it is still out there.
But what we're going to do is we're going to leave it right there, ladies and gentlemen. I need to know exactly what you guys are thinking in the comments section down below. Any further details that you may have on the case that could potentially give us a clearer understanding. Leave all of those thoughts and all of those comments down below. This probably will be part 1, followed by however many parts there needs to be. Let's see what we can do, ladies and gentlemen, as a community. I just need you guys to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if we are newly watching, turn your notification bells on so you don't miss out on future videos, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.